Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
All right, let's go ahead and get started for the September 9th Resource Conservation Commission meeting at 6:31. Diane, would you mind being timekeeper? I don't know who was timekeeper last time.
I can, sure.
Okay.
Chris is here too.
Oh, Chris is here.
Full house.
No one here for public appearances for non-agenda items? Okay, let's go to item 3, approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the draft minutes from August 12, 2024 RCC meeting?
I'll move approval.
Bill, is there a second?
Sliger, second.
Who second?
Kim.
Tim? Okay. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, let's vote on approving the draft minutes for August 12th, 2024. All in favor of approving the draft minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Aye.
No, motion approved. Okay, moving on to Agenda 4, item, new business, 4A, draft sustainability plan presentation. Looks like we have Ted from Pale Blue Dot here. Phil, do you want to go ahead and give an introduction?
Sure. I'll be pretty quick here. I'm pretty sure everybody's been introduced to Ted already. I know he's presented to the RCC twice already. Ted was on hand the last Wednesday of August. He and I talked to Committee of the Whole about the draft sustainability plan. At that point, he hadn't yet incorporated all of the internal comments from the RCC, from staff, from the planning team, and then public comments as well that we received from that process. As of, I think it was this morning or yesterday, Ted, you emailed me and said, hey, it's all done. We got a final plan. So Ted is here to, I know we talked about the draft plan last month. That gave an opportunity for some comments and feedback from RCC, but now is a chance for Ted to kind of wrap this all up, tell us where we are with the plan, kind of give a nice overview of everything that we sort of talked about last month. But Ted can definitely give more insight, more in-depth details and things, and we can have a little bit more discussion about where we go from here. I'll say that the process after this is I'll reach out to council and the mayor to get this onto the agenda for either the second meeting in September or in October to have it referred out to committees. And then we'll have a few committees that this will be presented to, get their feedback, and then have final approval from council. We're hoping the second meeting in October, it possibly will get pushed into November, but certainly by the end of this year, we'll have the sustainability plan formalized. Ted, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. Great to see you again. Thanks for letting me join you. I'm going to go ahead and share this little presentation I've got. Okay, Zoom, respond to me. Thank you. Okay, so Sorry, that says draft, but that's I forgot to update that image in this slide. But as Phil indicated, so we had the draft plan out there, received comments, definitely had great helpful comments from the planning team as well as from staff. We integrated those comments. None of them were necessarily, they're all substantive in terms of being important, but they didn't like change direction of anything major. It's more of a refinement. How can we help describe something better? Those sorts of things. So for anyone that was familiar with the draft plan, what you would find in the final are more along the lines of tweaks. Again, that doesn't mean that they're not important, just nothing in there shocking or that changes the real intent of goals and actions. Just to kind of give a super high level reminder for the process, so we're coming up on about 18 months time frame, all told, that we've been working. We did a series of foundational documents. We've had 2 online opportunities for input, an initial survey and then a review of the draft plan, as well as community meetings and a very robust, very involved, deeply committed planning team that really co-authored the plan. And I can't speak enough about the work and effort that all those folks put into it, and I'm grateful for that. The foundational researches that we did, which wrapped up about a year ago, was the vulnerability assessment, the GHG inventory, ground cover study, renewable energy potential study, and then all of that got wrapped up into our baseline document that had initial goals in there. And really it all served as a place for us to try to identify as much content as we could for the city, and then secondly, give our collaborative planning team a place to start. You may recall that we also did an initial survey that providing an opportunity for folks to give us input, share ideas, thoughts, concerns, etc. And a couple observations or key things that we heard in that survey. First of all, 96% of respondents had noticed some signs of climate change, and almost 90% had reported being personally impacted by one or more effect, which could be, for instance, a severe storm that downed a tree, something of that nature, extended allergies, observing that they are experiencing allergies over a longer period of time, those kinds of things. Of the respondents in that initial survey, 92% were moderately concerned, very concerned, or extremely concerned about climate change in general. And as we went through all of the responses, there were, I think, 4 key themes that we could take away from that input. And that is Fitchburg residents support municipal action and leadership. Residents want to see increase in renewable energy and a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions community-wide. Community members are concerned about climate change, and natural resource conservation is widely supported from the input that we received. So the plan itself we've organized it around 8 sectors. Those sectors are listed out there: transportation, buildings, waste, water, local food and agriculture, green space and ecosystems, health and safety, and sustainable economy. All told, each of those sectors then have strategies, or you can think of them as sub-goals. All told, there's 46 strategies amongst those 8 sectors. Those strategies then, or goal type statements, are then supported by a menu of 193 detailed actions that outline steps that can be taken to address those goals, to strive towards those goals. And the intent is that the implementation of this plan would be over a 6-year time frame through 2030. And at which point in time, we would suggest that the city may consider re-upping a sustainability plan to move into the next decade and continue the journey. One thing I would like to point out is that we also strongly urge and suggest that the city think of this as a living document, that it's a plan, certainly print it out as a PDF file or something like that, and it's static. But the reality is that this should be a living process as actions are implemented. We suggest reviewing implementation on some regular basis, every year, every 2 years, some pacing that makes sense for the city and staff, and then adjust action implementation accordingly. Maybe new science comes about, maybe new technology, maybe a new funding opportunity, or maybe we discover one action is really doing robust work for us and another action just isn't quite doing what we had all hoped it would be. So it allows an opportunity to nuance that a little bit. So we suggest you think of it as a living document accordingly. So just kind of giving a high-level overview of each of the sectors. In transportation and land use, we're focused on enhancing resilience of Fitchburg's mobility while reducing environmental impacts of transportation. That sector has 5 sector goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. By the way, this slide's a little old. There are some negatives in here, double negatives. We have taken care of that in the final draft. I just didn't have time this afternoon to update this, so please forgive me for that. But we have 5 sector goals: reducing our greenhouse gas emissions community-wide, decreasing our total vehicle miles traveled community-wide, increasing utilization of public transit, and also increasing community-wide electric vehicles or other zero-emission vehicles, and an increase in population density, which is really saying let's guide our development as much as possible within portions of the city that are already developed, which can help us increase opportunities for alternative transportation and has other benefits like reduction of energy costs, where we can build a little bit appropriately more dense. In our buildings and energy sector, we're focusing on resilience of our buildings as well as minimizing impacts through energy efficiency, renewable energy, and reduction of on-site fossil fuel combustion. So the sector goals, again, we've got 5 sector goals here: reduction of our greenhouse gas emissions associated with the sector, a reduction in our electricity use, a reduction in our natural gas use. And you'll see that natural gas use reduction is higher than the electricity use. And part of that is because we are looking to fuel switch. So converting on-site fossil fuel combustion to other systems like heat pumps, which can capture heat energy from the air or ground and convert that into heating interior, which is an electric system. Therefore, the decrease in electricity is different from the decrease in natural gas. We're also looking to increase renewable energy, which is both on-site renewable energy as well as purchased. So renewable energy purchased through a utility, where a resident or business signs up for that as an option. Perhaps they can't put solar in their house, etc. And we're also looking to decrease energy poverty in the community.
Ted,
in our waste, yes.
yeah, could you back up to the previous slide? So it says 7% reduction in electricity use. Does that mean electricity use, or does that mean in consumption from the power company? I'm just wondering how we're going to switch from gas furnaces to heat pumps while simultaneously reducing our electricity use.
So that is the goal, to reduce consumption of electricity. So if we were to tally up all of the kilowatt hours consumed by all facilities throughout the community, looking for a reduction there. And the point is a good one. Part of it is that the electric systems that we're mentioning tend to be more efficient than natural gas. The other thing is that we are looking for increasing energy efficiency. So the focus, the intent is to try to capture enough energy efficiency that the uptake in electricity associated with fuel switching would fit within that. Alternatively, so for the fuel switching number, there are some metrics out there to track kind of what is our number of folks that are using natural gas. I would say as we move along, as the city moves along in implementation, if you discover that we're on track for reduction of fossil fuels, but our electricity use is not quite going down the way we would, I think you will be able to ascertain, is that because we're moving in the right direction relative to our natural gas and it's just not working out as per modeling. And if that's the case, you'll at least be able to know that. And ultimately, the impact on overall GHG emissions, I think, will be mitigated and will still be within our overall targets, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess just
question on clarity. You've got negatives in the CO2 and the electricity, and then just a positive 30%, but it's still a reduction. Those are all negatives, or just what are we doing there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, and so that's been corrected. This slide is just prior to our final document that was issued yesterday, and so I had intended on correcting these. The document has gotten rid of the negatives, so the verbiage tells you that it's an increase or a decrease. So in these slides, I'm sorry, the negatives are still there. Please forgive me on that. So the double negatives go away.
All right, thank you. No worries.
Yeah,
it's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm still a little confused. So I was wondering if that, switching over to heat pumps is obviously going to mean we're going to use more electricity, but we've got a goal of using less. And so does that 7% decrease reflect overall energy efficiency improvements of everything, or does that include like additional solar PV systems so that we're using 7% less from the power company?
So I can cut in there too. It's a little bit of both. This is consistent with our 2019 Clean Energy Resolution, where we called for overall emissions reductions. We didn't really, in 2019, call for a specific reduction in electricity use, but more just a replacement with renewables. But if you look at the electricity versus natural gas, that's sort of what's reflected there. We're looking for fuel switching, but also efficiency to cut down on natural gas use. Because of that fuel switching, we balanced our overall reduction in energy towards the natural gas side, recognizing that as you do fuel switching, you're going to have some increase in electricity. The goal is still to have that denominator smaller. So the renewable energy is part of your numerator in the, what percent of your energy, of your electricity is being provided by renewables. But we still want to see that electricity use overall decrease first through efficiency, because then you have less electricity you need to replace with renewables. So it reflects that even though we're going to see an increase in some areas because of the fuel switching, the overall amount of electricity we'd like to see go down before we start targeting renewables, or at the same time. But the goal is to see that decrease in electricity use overall.
Well put, Phil. It's much like what we may talk about for waste management, which is next. It's always the reduce, reuse, recycle in energy. It's reduce our consumption wherever we can, because that makes us more efficient, and then renewables, which helps us decrease our emissions, increase resilience, and the lower we can make our consumption, the easier it is to meet through renewables.
I just got one question. It says enhancing the resilience of Fitchburg buildings. Is that just city buildings or buildings citywide?
Citywide, but of course the more direct actions are relative to City of Fitchburg's municipal buildings, but doing what we can to help support resilience beyond that.
Thank you.
Okay. In the waste management sector, so we're looking towards decreasing environmental impacts as well as greenhouse gas emissions through enhanced recycling, reuse, organic waste collection, and overall waste reduction. There are 4 goals. Please excuse the negatives again, the double negatives. Looking to decrease total GHG emissions and totally reduce, reuse, recycle. We're looking to reduce our overall solid waste, municipal solid waste that's generated and collected. At the same time, we're looking to increase the diversion of organics materials, so food and yard wastes and such. So organic materials diverting that out of the landfill trash system, try to use it for compost, building soil, etc. And then increasing diversion of recyclable materials, so aluminum, glass, plastics, etc. In the water and wastewater sector, we're looking to reduce...
Sorry, just a question on the organics diversion.
Yes.
You have supporting references or consensus of the regulatory community that organics diversion to compost and similar is a net positive, and how much so versus having it processed in a landfill where typically there is gas recovery and similar. So just wondering how deep you went into on the metrics of organics diversion and how much it should be promoted, and what is the positives of diverting it from landfills versus handling it in compost, which has its own gas emissions.
Yeah, so you're thinking greenhouse gas specifically there? Yeah,
correct. Yes,
that's a good point. So a lot of folks think of organics as a complete freebie in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, and you are right that it does have still emissions associated with it. There is some difference, however, depending on what process is used. If you use, for instance, backyard composting, which I do, if you overturn it properly, you don't have the same kind of methane buildup that you definitely get in a landfill, because a landfill is, it's done without oxygen. It's really building up the methane. But, and through industrial processes, there are other emissions associated with it because it's an industrial process. But using some factors from the US EPA, which is what we typically use, they've got a good sort of factor that you should use per ton of each type of waste. And just sort of rounding, basically in organics is going to be half or less of the emissions per ton of landfilling. So it definitely does have an advantage from that perspective. The other consideration is that, so now, of course, if you capture all of the methane and use it for energy, you can put that methane to beneficial use rather than just having it off gas or flared, which converts it into CO2. Rather than just having it flared for no beneficial purpose whatsoever, if we capture it and say use it as an additive to our natural gas line, or convert it into diesel or something like that, we can replace a commensurate amount of fossil fuels. That does have an advantage in the long term because we're using carbon. We're still going to have a carbon emission, but that carbon emission is in the short-term cycle. It's in the atmospheric cycle as opposed to the fossil cycle that fossil fuel is. So in terms of the hierarchy of best choices, taking organic out of the landfill system and capturing that for compost or industrialized compost production has both a lower emission as well as it has a very beneficial side product of soil building. It's a soil product that we can use. Those organics also can be used through a gasification system to create biochar, which can actually be used as a soil additive to increase soil carbon. So my point there is that with organics, we can get a beneficial product as well as a lower per unit short-term emission. So from that perspective, that's why we suggest that hierarchy is get the organics out of the landfill, get it into beneficial use first. Next level down is wherever we can't do that and it's in the landfill, let's make sure that we're capturing that methane and do something beneficial with it as opposed to just having it add to our GHG emissions.
Ted, how did you determine the number of organics being diverted now?
That's a great question. I'm so sorry. I should know right off the top of my head. Unfortunately, it's been over a year since we did that, and I'm struggling right now on the cuff to remember where our sources were. We had some content from the city, and we also had information from county level information on waste.
Yeah, I think this was either from a decade-old waste audit from Fitchburg, or I think there was a more recent county-wide waste audit that you scaled down to Fitchburg's population, if I'm remembering correctly.
For the waste audit,
right?
that is what we use to determine roughly how much is in our current waste stream. So there's two things that we want to know about organics. One is how much are we currently collecting, and then the other is how much is likely not being collected and going into our trash stream. For the collection side of things, that's where I'm struggling to recall exactly where we got that data. And I'm sorry, I should know it. It's just I didn't prep that. I can look it up though, and respond to you more clearly.
If you could get back,
it was either.
If you could get back to us on that, at least when Phil is determining any improvements, then he'll have at least a baseline.
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely documented in our GHG inventory, and I'm more than happy to make sure we can clarify it for certain. To respond to Phil's point, so the other part, which is trying to understand how much waste, how much organic is likely in the waste stream. For that, what we do is we use waste sort, waste characterization study. The state of Wisconsin did a waste characterization study, which was 2021, I believe. And that study broke the state into regions. And so we used the Fitchburg region, which was called the South Central region. So it's basically the Madison area. And so it's approximated how much organic is in our waste stream there, but it's a reasonable approximation. And so those two numbers combined give us a sense of what's likely the maximum that we might be able to divert. And then we sort of nuanced and tried to find a level that we thought would be achievable, but also make a difference. Okay. In the water and wastewater, we're looking towards reducing our impacts of our wastewater treatment and water consumption, while also increasing resilience to flooding and stormwater impacts. There are 4 goals associated: reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, reducing our water use, and a commensurate reduction in our wastewater generation. And lastly, to increase groundwater protection.
Ted, I have another. Can we go back to the wastewater? In your report, you said that the consumption of wastewater has decreased. Let's see, the consumption has increased, but wastewater has decreased. What does that imply? So it implies. So now we don't know for certain because the data that we have is just is as detailed as what we have access to. But when we see that, we typically there's typically 2 relationships to it. One is we begin to anticipate that we're probably seeing irrigation increases that could be accounting for the increase in water consumption. And then the tag team is on the decrease in waste water generation or treatment. Oftentimes we may be seeing, improved, for instance, efficiency of, say, toilet fixtures and the like, which are good. That's a good thing. We want to continue to see that. But that's usually when we see a little diversion there, that's usually what we're seeing.
Hey, Ted, I've got a question on this. How come we don't see any sector goals that address flooding and stormwater? It seemed like we would have something that would show a % increase in storage capacity to control stormwater.
So we do have, we definitely have actions around supporting increased stormwater management, which, by the way, occur not just in this sector, but also in the next sector relative to green space. So in other words, strategies to increase, turf conversion from lawn to native grasses, increasing tree canopy coverage. Those have direct benefits for stormwater management. So stormwater management definitely shows up in actions associated with both this sector and the next sector. We don't have an explicit goal, though, in part because we just don't have access to good data that can tell us what percentage do we currently have. Really, to accomplish that, a detailed stormwater assessment would need to be completed to ascertain what is the existing baseline percentage, and then therefore what is a reasonable percentage to hit. So through this process, we just didn't feel that we had data to be able to throw out a number and have that number feel like something we could share or talk about in any meaningful way. So instead, the goals are around increasing resilience, and then we have detailed actions on things that we can do to achieve that.
I think we do have a lot of stormwater data for the city. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but it seems like there's a lot of data that we could use to perhaps come up with a potential sector goal. So I'm just surprised it wasn't here, particularly since it's part of our a narrative above.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of data from the more water quality side, but as far as from the flood resiliency perspective, it is kind of anecdotal for the most part. Floods that have been reported, pictures, some various surveys of debris lines. But yeah, there's certainly not as much hard data from the kind of flood resiliency perspective as there is from water quality, which is something we'll talk about in the stormwater meeting next month.
And Ben, we do have some of that in a stormwater management plan for the city, correct?
Yeah, so the city doesn't have like a citywide flood resiliency study or anything like that. The city does have, and it's not even citywide because it doesn't account for the rural areas, but stormwater quality for the urban service area at least.
And I'll mention too that that sort of data gap is very consistent. I mean, that's very common. So it's not like that's not unusual by any means. It's a slightly emerging focus.
Thank you.
In the local food and agriculture sector, we're looking to enhance the resilience of the food systems, improving access to food, and ensuring food security. And preserving agricultural land while minimizing environmental impacts. So there are three primary focuses here, or goals. One, to increase the use of sustainable agricultural practices. The second is reduction in food insecurity. And then third is to preserve existing agricultural land where appropriate and possible. And I will point out too that there have been comments, and I completely agree with that. That some agricultural land may be used for food that's people oriented. Some agricultural land might be used for food that like generation of feed for cattle or others. And although from a long-term resilience perspective and local food security perspective, of course, growing foods that can go direct to human consumption is of course fantastic. The reason why preservation still makes an awful lot of sense is first, the ag land does offer support to overall biodiversity and support for green space potential. And secondly, of course, it's easy to eventually have somebody decide to convert a farm from cattle feed to human food. It's a lot easier to do that than, say, convert developed land into human food, right? So that's the reason for the exploration of that as a goal. In the green space and ecosystems sector, we're looking towards supporting community adaptation through expanded green infrastructure and enhanced ecosystem resilience. Corresponding focuses are increasing tree canopy coverage. That percentage, by the way, is increase over existing. So it's not like actual land number, if that makes sense. We're not saying 37% additional land cover. It's a 37% bump up from existing coverage. We're also looking at increasing prairie grass or native grasses through conversion of turf. So turf that might be manicured, certainly mowed, might have fertilizers, might have pesticides, converting that into native grasses, prairie grasses, wildflower sorts of installations, which grow much deeper roots, help support stormwater management, water absorption, and of course have significant biodiversity benefits as well, and frankly are gorgeous. Next, we're looking to decrease impervious surfaces, especially dark impervious surfaces, and in particular, wherever we can get a benefit out of micro heat island. In our vulnerability assessment and in our ground cover study, we've identified some suggested priorities where reduction of dark impervious surfaces might be of benefit. But increasing or decreasing that coverage is valuable. And then lastly, increasing biodiversity and the climate resilience of our green spaces. In the health and safety sector, we're looking to enhance community resilience by fostering strong community ties, robust infrastructure, and efficient systems. So the goals directly respond to that, reducing climate vulnerability, which is focused on people. How can we help support resilience amongst our people? Increasing infrastructure resilience. So thinking of, our city facilities, of course, emergency requirements, roads, infrastructure, bridges, and also increasing adaptive capacity, which is, thinking of how can we help support each other, supporting each other. So community networks, associations, how can we help increase capacity within the community to respond to events? And then lastly, in the sustainable economy sector, we're looking to foster Fitchburg's economic growth by prioritizing new sustainable enterprises and fair workforce advancement while increasing resilience and addressing climate change. We've got 4 then relative goal statements to develop economic potential. So we're saying, hey, some of these changes could increase business opportunities. Why not try to capture that for Fitchburg wherever we can? Also supporting equitable workforce development. So how can we help collaborate with others to help support training and finding opportunities for employment opportunities or development opportunities for our people in Fitchburg? Increasing local business resilience. How can we collaborate to help businesses think through what they may need for resilience? COVID certainly taught us that some things that on paper can seem kind of small can actually have some pretty big impacts. So how can we help each other build that resilience in our local businesses and economy? And then lastly, preparing for and guiding climate migration. We do know that in the coming decades, we can anticipate internal migration from parts of the country that are getting flooded more frequently, getting wildfires more frequently. People are beginning to move. We've begun to see that in some communities. Dubuque is a good example. Duluth also is a good example. And just saying, how can we turn that into a positive and anticipate that a little bit? So it's a positive and not a stress. So successfully implementing the plan, of course, all of the achieving all of those strategies, we have a number of sustainability goals that we will be advancing. We also can, though, achieve a cumulative reduction of 358,000 metric tons of GHG through 2030, which is a 38% reduction in annual emissions by 2030. By the way, that does align with science-based greenhouse gas emission reductions required to limit global warming between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees Celsius. We've compared that against IPCC recommendations, and we're right in the target there. That's equivalent to eliminating about 7 billion cubic feet of human-made greenhouse gas atmosphere from City of Fitchburg contribution. So it's pretty significant contribution. This diagram just sort of breaks down the sectors. We've got business as usual reductions, which are reductions that we anticipate will happen kind of with or without the plan. Things like increasing fuel efficiency. Every year, our average car gets a little bit more fuel efficient, according to the Department of Transportation, existing commitments from utilities and the like. But then you can see our reductions that are coming from our transportation strategies and actions, the reductions from our buildings and energy strategies, waste management, which is on there. It's just 0.2%, but it is in there. And water and wastewater, which shows up as 0, but it does actually have a contribution. It's just more than 0.0. It's less than 0.0, I should say. And that's just simply a reflection of those two sectors are smaller portions of our GHG emissions, so they show up as smaller contributions. By the end of 2030, successful achievement of the goals would have us at about 62% of remaining emissions from where we are today.
Ted, I just want to comment on the transportation reductions. I think that I know that Fitchburg gets a lot of traffic from other communities, especially when the Beltline is busy. So, and we get people that are commuting to places further south. I think that transportation reduction is going to be awfully difficult. I mean, we can influence Fitchburg residents, but I would say half of our traffic is not Fitchburg.
Certainly on the highway system, yeah, definitely. We do think, though, that the biggest impact on that sector is transitioning away from fossil fuel use. So wherever we can move towards electrification or other zero emission, that can definitely be of benefit. We do anticipate some of that happening in the business as usual, which would include our surrounding communities. So, the folks driving through Fitchburg, we anticipate that more and more of them will be using zero emission vehicles also. And some of them also our standard vehicle will be getting going in efficiency. But overall, the transportation sector is a challenging one. It's going to be a harder sector to transition.
So, Ted, is the increasing fuel efficiency and conversion to electric vehicles part of the business as usual reductions, or are you counting that in the transportation reductions?
Increasing fuel efficiency is in the business as usual. We are not accounting for any beyond business as usual. We don't have any strategies around advancing that other than to support that for municipal operations. For electric vehicles, we have it in both places. In other words, we expect to see some zero emission vehicle adoption happen regardless of what we do. It's already begun. People are doing that. Manufacturers have goals for that. However, in our goals for the transportation sector, the percentages that we're talking about are increasing over that. We want to see it move a little bit faster than what it'll happen without concerted effort. So therefore, it shows up in both places. Not double counted, I should clarify.
Right.
The portion that we think is going to happen is in business as usual. Then we've got an additional part in transportation.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You bet.
Are those
I'm happy to.
Are those links working now? That weren't there were several links on the draft that didn't go anywhere? Are they working now?
In the reference section?
Yeah. For example, you had a link to the climate risk and vulnerability assessment. That link didn't go anywhere, and there were a couple of others to view.
Yeah.
Those are working now?
Yeah. Yeah, in the reference section, I have to apologize. We had our PDF creator, the program did us wrong. And when it created the PDF file, we were not aware it failed to create proper links. But they all work now in the final, and we've double checked them. So the links in the reference section should send you to the right places.
Okay, good.
I've got a question for, I guess, Ted and Phil. Is it possible of the 193 actions that are identified in the sustainability plan, is there a way to rank them so that we could say, these are the ones that could be easily accomplished versus ones that are going to be very difficult? I mean, there are a lot of great actions in there, but I look at some of them and I go, well, it's going to be pretty tough to get that past council or get the public to accept it, et cetera. So I don't know if there's a way to rank them.
Yeah, I guess
so
along two dimensions would be nice. How difficult is it and how big a bang, how much does it actually deliver?
Yeah.
So I did already talk to Committee of the Whole about this as well. I've talked with Chad, the city administrator, about it. The next big thing that I'm working on with the sustainability plan is I've already started up a spreadsheet. Essentially, I'm putting together a matrix that says for each individual action, who are all the different, who are the departments I expect to be involved in this and in what capacity, what partners outside of the city of Fitchburg do we anticipate would be involved here? And then also both in terms of a time expense and a budget expense, what scale, kind of low, medium, high, do we expect this to fall under? Also trying to give a sense of, is this something I think we could start tackling as soon as next year, or might this be waiting until 27, 28? But that is a spreadsheet that I'm going through right now. And once we get either through approval of the final plan, or at least closer to approval of the final plan, I'm going to be meeting with department heads and key staff members to talk through all the stuff as well and make sure that we've had conversations about what is maybe already aligned with things that they're doing and would be really easy low-hanging fruit versus stuff that'll require a little bit more lead time. But that's something that we're talking about already and that I'm already working on.
Okay. When do you expect that we'll see that?
That's a good question. Next year. Not before next year. It's going to be a big lift to do that. But that's essentially that plus the meetings with departments will be the beginning of creating an implementation plan for this.
So are you thinking early next year?
We'll just have to see. I hope so.
Okay.
I don't have a timeline on it yet, but my goal is, we can start some things before I've finished that matrix, but the sooner I can get that done, the sooner we can really aggressively push ahead. So yeah, the goal is early next year.
Okay.
And I'll just write on that a little bit, just to say also, so in the implementation actions, we do suggest also kind of thinking on a year-by-year basis. And the reason for that is what we've observed is some actions that at the onset we might think, hey, that one's going to be a hard lift or maybe difficult to get to. We've seen communities end up finding out that it's not, it actually, something comes up. A great example is we had one community that right after their plan was completed, within 2 months, they had access to a grant that they didn't see coming, but they monitored grants. They kept their eyes peeled for that. They applied for it, and they got $120,000 that helped them take care of actions that actually they had dropped down on the priority list only because they didn't think that they would be able to get to it. They just didn't know how they would do it. And the other thing is just kind of thinking about it on a year-by-year basis, just kind of keeping track of what other things are we working on as a municipality. Some actions you can find ways of tucking it right into something. So kind of, although thinking of it in terms of prioritization from that perspective, we encourage being a little flexible with it and kind of keeping our eyes open for those synergies or overlap with other efforts or opportunities that appear,
Great. Thank you, Ted. Any more questions or comments? We're just gone a few minutes past our schedule.
And I'll just throw in a reminder, or I don't think I mentioned this right away, but because RCC is one of the the committees, commissions that will have this referred to them from council. This isn't our last opportunity to talk about it. Once this is referred out and it's on the agenda as a resolution to approve the final plan, then that'll be one more chance to have some deeper conversation if needed.
Oh, thank you, Phil. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so given that one of our goals is to reduce our water usage by 6%, does that mean we ought to rethink the construction of our next water tower?
From my perspective, I don't know that we have enough information to answer that with any intelligence right now.
Just seems like if we go from 3 to 4 while trying to reduce the water consumption,
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's the water usage is a tough one because it's somewhat dependent on the rain and what happens in those seasons. So when we have a dry season, we're using way more water consumption in those years. And then, this year we had a pretty wet year. It's getting a little drier right now, but early in the season, there's not as much use for irrigation. People aren't using it on their lawns, aren't watering their, gardens and flowers as much. So that's a really tough one to pin down. I mean, but in general, the climate change, all the maps that I see, our precipitation should be increased from where it was, so 10 to 20% more rain, which I'd rather be in that space than going the opposite direction. And so I think that's favorable to people in Wisconsin at the current time with the current climate models. Who knows where that'll be 10, 15 years from now, though.
All right. Any other comments or questions for Ted and Phil? If not, thank you guys for presenting, and thank you for sharing the information and on the sustainability plan. I think it's looking really good. I think it seems like a lot of hard work went into it. So thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you. And I will reiterate the massive amount of work that the volunteer and staff planning team did. Really an amazing work. So,
by the way, I do have one more question. How many people were on the sustainability committee, and how many of those were non-Fitchburg residents?
So the overall planning team, we had 30. Not all could show up for every meeting, so it might vary from meeting to meeting. And I would have to look again very carefully, but I think the only non-Fitchburg residents would be potentially staff members, and or there were a couple allied agencies, but the volunteer residents were Fitchburg residents.
I know of one member who is not a Fitchburg resident, but is close to Fitchburg, has been on city staff in the past. But yeah, I think anyone else that I know of that isn't a resident was involved in an organization that does business in Fitchburg.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to item agenda 4B, resolution R-152-24, approving agreement with Pelletieri for the 2025-2029 solid waste recycling contract. Is there a motion out there to approve this resolution?
I move to approve.
Right, Diane, second?
I'll second. Sorry, I'll second.
Chris, second. All right, open for discussion.
Ben, is this the place where you would be inserting that Fitchburg would absorb the cost to do a swap?
Yes, I could add that into the memo and revise it for finance and council tomorrow. The reason I didn't include it, I guess just being equitable with trying to have, just being equitable and trying to put the cost on the residents if they need this additional service.
then I guess in my opinion or thought at the time would be that they would be responsible for paying it. If the city does cover the cost, and this is kind of another, I really couldn't make an estimate of how many residents or units would take us up on that offer. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 100. I would be shocked if it was a significant number. But that being said, that cost still would get put back to all of the residents.
Well, I realize that, but we're making a rather significant change for also a small number of residents, and it might mitigate the negative feedback that alders are receiving or will receive.
Sure. Yeah. Well, then we can edit that staff memo and.
You might just throw it out there for the council to consider.
Yeah, and I would just pick a number basically of how many we would assume. 50. I mean.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a wild guess.
That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I will. I'll do that in there, or I'll put that in there, and I'll throw 50 out there as the number. Kind of just be the first come, first serve as far as that goes.
Well, it's an estimate. It could be 60, could be 40.
Right. $25. There's unless it was 400 people, or it's not going to be a problem, and it's not, and it absolutely won't be. So.
Yeah, there weren't that many people taking advantage of the overflow to begin with. So
right. A 95 gallon is a pretty large cart. I'm sure people would prefer the 65 if they can get by with it. Just takes up, 30 gallons less space.
Thanks.
Hey, Ben, in the staff memo that's at the end of the document here, in the information that was provided to us, it's page 125. There's a table, annual cost per household. Why does it go down in 2025? The costs go down.
Yeah, so this table here is the basically contractor costs per household, and these numbers are based on, except for the 2024, that's a real number, that's a hard number. Mm-hmm. These 2025 and beyond costs are based on this recommended level of service, so that's the eliminating the unlimited recycling and adding that extra yard waste collection. Just removing the unlimited recycling actually brings that total cost down. So I guess the next question is, well, then why does the rate have to go up, $3 to maintain a negative fund balance? And that's really just due to additional costs unrelated to pelletary. So, for example, yard waste grinding. The city's under budgeted yard waste grinding, so that's going to be increased. Put some more money in for illegal dumping. There's also salary increases, benefits, wages, that kind of a deal. So it's not the pelletary contract that would drive the rate increase or the fee increase for 2025. It's kind of all these other items that drive that.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of yard waste and the drop-off site, which we weren't really, but I am now, did you talk to Pelletary about changing either the number of corrugated cardboard? I think we talked about this at the last meeting, either reducing the number of times they come to pick it up or changing the number of containers that are there?
Yeah, so we're kind of looking at changing up the layout at the recycling drop-off site potentially a little bit to accommodate brush. Right now, the city doesn't accept brush there. but people bring brush and they put it in the yard waste. So if people are going to bring brush, regardless, it'd be nice if it was at least separated out, so you can get some higher quality compost. So to do that, I think we would potentially want to look at maybe going down to 8 to clear up some more space. 8 cardboard versus 10, but the cardboard dumpsters are just full all the time.
They weren't. I was there this afternoon, and they were empty ones.
Oh, they must have just been there.
And the polystyrene one was missing. That's the second time I've been there when it's gone.
So I saw it on the truck today when I was driving around.
So then when they pick it up, they don't bring a replacement. They empty it and then bring it back.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah,
with the metal dumpster, they bring a replacement, but that's not pelletary. Yeah.
And with the cardboard, they just empty those and leave them in place. Well, maybe they had just emptied them, but there weren't any that were overflowing or even close to it.
And currently, they pick those up on a daily basis during the week, Monday through Friday?
Correct.
Okay. So it just seems like, maybe the Monday, Wednesday, Friday pickup. I mean, I think it's important that they're empty before the weekend, so Fridays are in. It's important to empty them on Mondays.
Yep.
You have one in between, so it just, we make it through the weekends when most of the cardboard is getting dumped in there, I would assume. So it seems like...
I mean, it's going to be full on Tuesday is the problem.
They'll all be full when they come and pick them up tomorrow?
I'll go check it out, but I think you'd
maybe I'm underestimating like how much they're used.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Or maybe just try it for a week and see what happens.
I like that. Yeah, I think that'd be a good. Pick it up 3, see what happens. If I'm just concerned, it's gonna be a problem with not meeting folks' expectations. But certainly, I don't see the harm in trying it for a few weeks and seeing how it goes. Maybe it's not a big deal.
They don't pick up at all on the weekend, right? And we make it, and presumably Saturday and Sunday are the biggest dumping days. So if we can make it from Friday to Monday without overflow, I would think we could make it from a Monday to Wednesday.
You would think.
Is there a way?
I think what's happening is, and because you totally would expect Sunday and Saturday to be the big dumping days, but I think people are driving on their way to work Monday through Friday and stopping then. So that's when you're getting the,
It's not really on anybody's way to work. We don't have a big housing development south of there.
Well, you got other cities south of there that drive into Madison.
Therein lies the problem.
Yep.
On the the foam
polystyrene?
Polystyrene, yeah. Is there a way to get pelletary to have larger openings on those? The reason I say that, because I was there last week dropping off some, and somebody left a huge pile of ice chests, freezers they were using for whatever it was, frozen goods, all up and down the length of the thing. And me and another person there actually broke them all up and put them in. They wouldn't fit into the container. So I don't know if there's a way to get bigger doors on those things, or.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to just get a new one. It's seen better days.
Or at least a sign that says, "Please break it down.
Don't just leave it." Yeah. I'll have to ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
You would think people would,
Well, the person inadvertently left their address and everything, their shipping address in one of them. So if you need it, I got it.
Probably from New Glarus or something.
No, it was a Fitchburg.
Was it a Fitchburg address?
Yeah,
oh, that's
Fitchburg
good.
address.
That's good.
Thanks. Any other discussion? All right, let's take a vote on approving the resolution R-152-24. All in favor of approving the pelletary contract?
With that adjustment, right?
What's that?
That swap adjustment.
Yep, with the added language about the city paying for 50.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Do you need a motion for that?
I would think that would have to be an amendment.
Yeah.
Oh. So
we have to reword it?
I move that we add language to allow for the council to consider absorbing a one-time swap fee for those residents who have been using overflow recycling. I need a second.
I'll second.
Slager, second.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Well, do we have, I mean, are we going to go with 50 for the wording? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
As an estimate.
Okay. All in favor of approving the motion, approving a resolution with the changes?
First, we have to vote on that.
On the amendment first.
On the amendment, okay.
Yes, and then on the main motion.
Okay, so everyone, let's take a vote on the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
None opposed? Okay, so now we go back to the original resolution with the amendment, right? Okay. So let's take a vote on resolution R-152-24 with the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Not opposed? Motion with the amendment approved. Okay, agenda item 4C, grants and alternative funding options for 2025. Phil, you're on.
All right. This is going to be just a little bit of an open discussion. So this was on the agenda. I was focused on getting the energy report finished for last year, and I haven't had a lot of time to research already grants that I know are going to be coming down the pipeline next year. I will say that in the next 4 to 6 months, I'm hopeful that the TAP grant that we received a couple years ago to expand B-cycle in Fitchburg will be completed, and that will free up some time for me to focus on some other grant opportunities as well. So some of the things that I will be looking at, we've received an energy innovation grant program in the past to do the comprehensive energy planning project with some of our neighbors in Dane County. So I'll be looking at the energy innovation grant again next year. I believe that is open annually. So I'm anticipating that'll be available again next year, and I'll look at opportunities for the EIG program. I know that I have talked with Ross Kaler about some different grants available for closing up some of the network gaps in our biking infrastructure. We know that with the addition of Southdale to Fitchburg, that kind of triangle between Rimrock and Highway 14 and the Beltline, Southdale doesn't have great connection for cycling to Fitchburg. You kind of have to bike down along Rimrock, where there's just a painted shoulder, essentially, in 35-mile-an-hour traffic that is never quite going the speed limit, it seems. So we'd like to make that a little bit safer and more comfortable. That one, plus biking along McKee Road from Seminole Highway to Fish Hatchery Road. Right now there's a sidewalk that's pedestrian only, and then just a paved shoulder on a 40-mile-an-hour road. So a couple of major network gaps we'd like to close. We'll be looking at some DOT and other transportation grants for those. At the moment, I don't have anything else on my radar. Certainly, we will continue to look to expand our EV fleet. There's not grants per se for that, but credits available through the Inflation Reduction Act. We did receive that $7,500 credit for each of the 2 EV4 Lightnings that we received for Public Works earlier this year, and we'll be applying for that again for any future EVs that qualify. But those are right now the grants that tend to be on my radar, and then I'll just have to keep an eye open for what else is out there, unless anybody's familiar with programs that I haven't named.
All right, thanks, Phil. All right, moving on to agenda item old business 5A, Fall Recycling Day event planning. Phil?
Yeah, so just a final reminder, this Saturday is going to be the Fall Recycling and Shred event. I know the timing was really unfortunate that we ended up having to schedule it over the Wisconsin-Alabama football game. I mean, not technically over it, the same day. So with an 11 o'clock game time, the 8 to 11 event is potentially going to be a challenge. We're a little light on volunteers at the moment, so if anybody in the group here has not volunteered and is able and willing, let me know.
Phil,
otherwise, I'll be reaching out to council again. Sorry, go ahead.
Did Randy Udall contact you? Because I talked to him and he's willing to help with shredding.
Okay. He has helped in the past. He didn't respond to my email to council, I don't think, but I'm going to ping them again tomorrow.
But he's not on the council anymore.
Oh, right. Of course. Thanks. Randy did not reach out, but I'll email him separately.
Okay.
But yeah, that'll be fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, I think right now we're at 4 or 5. I guess including me and Ben, we're at 5 or 6, I believe, which is probably enough. Talking with Ben, it kind of seems like maybe we haven't needed all of the helpers that we've put down electronics recycling in the past. They're certainly happy to have our help, but we'll be okay if we don't have as many hands there. And it seems like probably there's less need for traffic routing with the elimination of the med drop and just overall better signage. So we should be in pretty good shape, but still send out one more call, maybe see if any other staff members want to assist. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got there.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I'm disappointed I won't be able to attend. That'll be the first one I missed in a long time. We'll be out of town, but hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, and we'll start talking about dates for next year already with Pelletary and Resource Solutions and try to make sure we've got a little bit more of our pick of dates. This one we just, we reached out in November of last year, and already this was one of only 2 dates that Pelletary had available, and Resource Solutions was really not fond of the idea of moving into later October into November where it gets colder. So we kind of got pigeonholed into this one. We'd like to avoid that for next year.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like you're up for agenda 5B, City of Fitchburg Annual Energy Analysis.
Yes. Let me pull that up. I closed at the end of the workday, didn't I? All right. So I do have most of this. I've got most of this in the packet. I actually kept working on it through the day today, so there's quite a bit more completed on a building level. Don't need to go through page by page, but this is the annual energy report that I've been putting together since 2022, since we stopped farming that out to a third-party consultant. So just kind of trying to get a good look at what our annual energy usage looks like and our renewable energy commitments, how we're trending towards those. It definitely took a lot longer this year than it would in a typical year. The sustainability plan really ate up a lot of my time, and then trying to keep B-cycle momentum moving forward, but finally got a nice chunk of time in the past week to really dig into this and get a lot of the analysis done and updating this report. The big stuff that I can cover really quickly. Let's see, we'll start with this image here. So we had our 25 by 25 goal from the Governor Doyle's Energy Independent Communities pledge back in 2009, as well as 25% renewable electricity goal from our 2019 clean energy resolution. And we've hit that already. We passed 25% in, I think, 2022. We're actually down a little bit from 2022. We were at 41% that year and only 39 last year. And that just has to do with the much discussed rooftop solar issues that we had, that we probably lost a third of our production over the last couple of years, or a quarter of our production from our rooftop arrays. And so we dipped a little bit there, along with higher overall electricity needs for the city as we keep growing. We've also hit so it's the specific goal in the 25 by 25 pledge from 2009 was 25% of our electricity and fleet fuel coming from renewable sources. And we did hit that as well. And that's without any EVs or hybrid vehicles in our fleet. So as we keep expanding into EVs, like I was talking about earlier, that decreases the denominator. That means that we have a lower amount of fossil fuels that we're using to begin with. So the renewable that we do use is a higher percentage of our remaining electricity. So I'm anticipating with getting our full solar rooftop back in production, as well as shifting to more EVs, that this number is going to keep climbing over the coming years. We have a goal of a 30% overall we have an overall decrease in fossil fuel emissions. That's not related to any of our specific goals. That's just awesome that even though the city is growing, we've seen an overall decrease in fossil fuel energy use. And that, again, has to do with efficiency and with renewable energy adoption. Our goal is a 30% per capita decrease based on a 2018 baseline. That's our goal from the 2019 Clean Energy Resolution. Through last year, we're already at a 13% decrease in per capita emissions. Now, one thing worth noting, I don't believe I put this analysis into the report yet. I'll still need to do a little bit more addition there. We are adding a police services facility in the next couple of years. That's going to increase our energy use, of course. We're doing what we can, working with the consultant to make sure that that building is as efficient as possible. We want to make sure that it is not adding any more than it absolutely has to our total energy usage, but that is that's going to make us play catch up again for a couple of years after that building's completed, because we're going to see a spike in energy use just by adding another municipal building when we've only got 7 occupied municipal buildings right now. Adding an 8th one, that's about 14% increase in our number of buildings. So that'll increase the energy load. A lot of building by building detail and kind of numbers in aggregate here. You can just see that our overall energy usage has increased for the city. And this is all, I know we've talked about this before, but that difference between the broader Fitchburg community and the city, this report is just for the municipality. So you can see that over the past few years, there was kind of a bit of a leveling off in energy usage, but then adding in that 3rd Fitchburg fire station plus a growing population and coming out of the pandemic, we have seen an increase in overall energy use these past 3 years relative to the 3 preceding. And again, some of this has to do with bouncing back from the pandemic. Some of it is just population increase. Some is that we added in those portions of the town of Fitchburg, and so we have additional services that we need to deliver to a larger footprint and a larger population. But that despite that increase, we are meeting more of that with renewables, which is really exciting. I have talked to MG&E. They're well aware. We are really excited about the O'Brien Solar Farm and the fact that we were able to buy in on effectively 0.5 megawatts worth of capacity of electricity from that project. That's the orange bar here. The navy blue is our rooftop, our on-site generated solar that we're using as a portion of our electricity. Orange is once we started purchasing from the O'Brien Solar Array. If we can get another 1 or 2 of those, that would go a long way towards helping reduce our fossil fuel electricity use as well. One thing that will probably be worth looking into is we buy a very small percent of green power tomorrow from MG&E, which is just a 1 cent per kilowatt hour surcharge. Basically, we offset a small, I think just 1 or 2%. Oops.
Am I still there?
Yeah.
You still there, Phil?
Well, he's trying.
Am I still there?
Yeah, Phil, we can't hear you. Oh.
Are you hearing me now?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, my earbud died. This happens to me every meeting, and I keep failing to get new earbuds that last more than an hour and a half.
Or have shorter meetings.
Or, well, yeah, one of the two. We'll figure it out. What I was saying is we purchase about 1 or 2% offset of our electricity use from the City Hall and the Public Works Maintenance Building with Green Power Tomorrow, and that's a 1 cent per kilowatt hour surcharge. Council did ask at the Committee of the Whole meeting when we talked about the sustainability plan. They asked about, what would it take to just offset all of our remaining fossil fuel electricity use with renewable energy. And if it's 1 cent per kilowatt hour, do the quick math here. We've got about 4.5 million kilowatt hours remaining here. So that would be about $45,000 a year. I don't know that we have that in the budget, but that's roughly what it would take if we just wanted to essentially do it's effectively a carbon offset purchasing offsets to get to 100%. So we know that something like that is an option as well, but something like O'Brien, another one of those solar farms would be a fantastic thing to buy into.
Phil, isn't there another one being planned up by Wayland Road and Fish Hatchery,
Yes.
just north of the?
Yes, there is another one. As far as I'm aware, that is going to be going directly into the MG&E grid. I don't think that's going to be available for another renewable energy rider project. So there have been multiple. That's going to be the third solar farm, I believe, going into Fitchburg post O'Brien. But none of them have been made available to commercial customers in the same way that the O'Brien solar farm was. So we're just waiting for another one of those. I've made it clear to our contact that we are interested. So if something like that, if another opportunity like that comes along, we will. He'll let us know.
Phil, before you
skip through a lot of the text.
Before you keep going forward, on page 8, you mentioned the addition of a new fire station. Haven't we added 2 fire stations since 2018?
We added the West Fire Station, I believe, was added in 2017. So it went live in 17 or 18. I don't remember the exact date there. It might have been 2018. Okay. But then the East Fire Station was constructed in 2019 and started up operation late that year. So 2020 was the first full year with the East Fire Station.
Okay, thanks. Oh, another thing on solar. Do any of our park shelters have solar? I know that you did a solar feasibility study, and I think at the time you thought that we'd put solar just about everywhere that it was feasible. Do any of our park shelters have?
We don't have solar on any park shelters yet. There have been some conversations about different candidates. Existing park shelters, the difficulty is that they're just not constructed to bear that weight, and so the cost of shoring them up, we're not sure that would overall be the best use of the money for the small amount of solar that it would enable. When we look at, for instance, the neighborhood hub up at Fish Hatchery on Traceway Road, that's one that I've been talking with Scott Endel more about bike infrastructure, but I'm also trying to have some conversations about whether we can do solar and maybe even solar plus storage, a pilot in that project. I think the storage is probably unlikely, but I'd like to get solar on the rooftop of the buildings as part of that hub project. So we just got to see if that's going to work out. That would be the best candidate in terms of park shelters.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, skip through a lot of stuff. If there's anything that you saw that you really wanted to talk about, feel free to stop me. One thing that's always just worth noting is energy costs go up. So there's more than just the environmental emissions reasons to decrease our energy usage overall. It's just it makes for more reliable, predictable, easy to budget fuel costs if we can increase our fuel efficiency on vehicles, convert to EVs, if we can offset with more renewables. That of course you have the cost up front to buy into a renewable program or to purchase solar panels and have them installed, but then the sun shines for free, so you're just kind of paying off the debt over time. But again, that's something you can budget for more easily. Every cost of every cost of energy is going up over the last several years. Electricity looks like a decrease. This just happens to be because we're using more solar. So the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour that we purchase has been going up as well. But we just have seen a practical decrease on our end because of the increase in renewable energy. So just another really good kind of our argument here for cutting down on our energy usage just in terms of finances for the city.
Phil, I have a suggestion on that line graph, and I think you're pulling the colors from the bar graph above, but at least I can barely distinguish the colors on the line graph. I mean, I can't really tell.
Good to know.
Maybe the next time through.
Yeah, and I would imagine for anybody with any kind of color blindness, it's impossible to read. So that's that's a point well taken. I'll just add a comment about that right now. Here's the colors. I mostly am doing the colors from kind of the city's official color palette, but there are more colors available than just these 5, so we'll update that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Phil, with regard to figure 13, Fitchburg fleet purchases.
Yes.
Over the weekend, the mayor sent me an email asking if RCC could start looking at developing a green fleet policy. I think that's something, Bill, Phil, we talked about a couple of weeks ago in some email exchanges.
Yeah.
So she wants us to start looking at that and see what we can do to get a policy together or something. So I'm not sure how we go forward with that, but I told her that's something we would discuss probably at either the October or November meeting. So most likely, I'd like to see it brought up at the October meeting if possible.
I will note that.
Yeah, that's one that I've the mayor emailed me as well, and I've talked with Chad about that. It is kind of just on our radar. Council is about to vote on approving 3 new EV purchases for the city. We're looking at more already. Between that, all of the credits available through the IRA, and then the hybrid and electric vehicle purchase fund that was made available in the city's budget a few years ago, there has been a lot of momentum moving in that direction. So yeah, I think a green vehicle purchasing policy would be a logical next step here. I'll look at some neighboring cities, talk to some of my peers, and see if any of them have this. I know that Middleton's been working on a broader green purchasing policy, but I'll ask about fleet specifically. Just see kind of how some other cities have approached it, and maybe there will be some good models for us there.
Yeah. Is that something you could share with us at the next meeting?
He's not going to be here in October.
What's that?
I think the October meeting is when he's not.
Oh, you're not here in October, Phil?
I'll have to double check.
That's the stormwater meeting. Ben, that's the stormwater meeting, right?
Yeah, for the calendar, and I do have some stormwater agenda items, but certainly we got time. But I don't know if Phil's unable to make that, then we could potentially do it at a different time.
I will have to check. I know typically my wife is with our toddler during these meetings. I think she's unavailable that date, but I'll look and see.
So maybe November.
My plan wasn't to be there.
Okay, well, let's look at November.
If I need to.
Yeah, if you're tied up, let's look at November then. That'll give you a little more time to do some research.
I'll see if I can move things around, and if not, then I'll talk with Ben, and we'll make sure it's on the November agenda.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I got that email as well. So I think, Phil, if you do some initial research, Ron and I and other commissioners could help with the policy writing and input. So feel free to delegate that one back to us. And I know that James maybe had a point to make as well.
Yeah, this is much longer term thinking, but I think the next time that we have our municipal solid waste contract up, hopefully we were preparing them to think about some biodiesel and or electrical vehicles in the garbage fleet, that we contract out. I think that could make a big impact in the future.
We did include that, ask for that information in the RFP. And Pelletieri does have some electric 5?
Biodiesel or CNG, compressed natural gas trucks.
Oh, okay. I think they were getting some electric ones. I think that's what we were told.
Yeah, so they're starting in many other of their competitors. So I just think the next time this comes up 3-4 years, I think we're in a position to ask in the RFP a certain percentage of electric and or biodiesel in those big contracts that the city lets out.
I think, it would have to be part of a discussion, of course, but I think it would be natural if we have a green purchasing policy to also have some kind of consideration in major city contracts. Would definitely be something we'd look into.
Yeah, great.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil.
Tyler's trying to come to say good night, I think. The next image here is just looking at building level kilowatt hour purchases. What's interesting here is that, so overall, we've had higher purchasing from the utility. And again, some of that is just city growth. The biggest two culprits have been the fire stations here. If you look at 2016 versus where we are now, that gray bar, but then the dark blue up on top is the water utility. So again, population growth, water use is likely to increase. This goes back to that question to Ted from the sustainability plan. We're already taking steps with the water utility to increase the efficiency of some of our pumps. Make sure that we're trying to cut down our energy use as much as possible, but that water utility is the most significant contributor to electricity use as a single use in the city. So that's going to be definitely one of the places that we want to target as we try to cut that denominator down and just decrease our overall energy usage.
What page are you on? I don't have that.
Yeah, I don't have that either.
So where we are now is somewhere back in here.
Yeah,
this I think was the last page in the packet.
Yeah.
This is as far as I had gotten Thursday, Friday, whenever it was that I put the packet together. Everything else is stuff that I just put together today.
Okay.
So apologies for that. I can share this out with you this week as well, just so if you want to look at it in more detail. I don't want to spend too long, but I also know we do have, we're a little bit ahead of time. This one is interesting. So I've actually cleaned up. I know I've done some calculations in the past on energy use intensity. So this is just looking at converting all energy to BTU, British thermal units, or in this case, 1,000 British thermal units, and the total energy use per square foot of a building. Realized a bit later than I'd like to admit that there are two different ways of calculating energy use intensity, and I was kind of mixing up without realizing it. You can either calculate the site energy use intensity, and that's just really looking at that kind of building envelope and combustion and energy use on the site, or you can look at source energy use intensity. So this year I got things a little bit more precise, and we're actually comparing apples to apples. Source energy use intensity, you're looking at partially the building's energy performance, but also where its energy is coming from. So the fact that all of our buildings are using a substantial amount of renewable energy decreases that overall source energy use intensity because the source energy has a lower emissions factor. So what you see here is almost all of our buildings are below the black line, which is the national benchmark median EUI for this building type, or the most comparable building type I could find. The two buildings that are currently worse than the national median benchmark are the community center, which doesn't have any rooftop solar panels. That makes it almost entirely unique here. The fire station 1 is the only other building listed here without rooftop solar. And the public library, which you're all well aware from numerous updates over the past year and a half, the library has been suffering from the worst of the solar inverter malfunctions. So basically the entirety of 2023, starting in April or May of 2023, the library had no rooftop solar being generated. So that was a pretty big hit for the library's source EUI. So hope to see that improve probably next year in 2025. It was 2/3 of this year as well that the library wasn't getting its rooftop production, unfortunately. But otherwise, all of our buildings are really strong performers. This is a good example, a good visual on why it was that we had 3 different buildings that were recognized as climate champions in 2020 when Dane County's Office of Energy and Climate Change offered that recognition for the first time.
Phil, does the City Hall include the
and then what you'll see when
Phil, does the City
Sorry,
Hall,
what was that, Ron?
City Hall include the police department?
It does, yes.
Okay. And so
so that was a tricky one. What I did for the comparable building type for City Hall was a courthouse. Police station wasn't quite right, and Civic Center wasn't quite right. But I went with courthouse and thought that was a comparable one. Once the new police facility is constructed and we can separate those two uses, I'll get something that's a little bit more appropriate for this building.
Thank you.
Yep. These I don't want to go through in a ton of detail here. Again, when I send this out, you'll get a chance to dig through this if you like. But I basically put together some energy dashboards for each of our 5 most used buildings here. So, or no, 6, everything but fire station number 1, which is just kind of a public safety administrative building now. So in this, it's looking month by month at our electricity and natural gas profiles. One notable thing here that I'm going to need to look into is that our natural gas use in City Hall has been increasing in the summer year by year. In the past, what has been going on here is that City Hall has pretty old HVAC system. It's not particularly good at zoning. So to cool the whole average building down to an acceptable temperature, certain, especially individual offices that have their own vents, get really cold. And so people will actually bring in a space heater and turn that on, or we get extra boiler use because people are calling for higher heat because their office is too small. So we want to look at what we can do in City Hall to decrease that summer natural gas usage and try to get the temperature to a better level without resorting to turn the boilers on. That's a conversation I'll have to have with Kevin, our facilities supervisor. But that's definitely a trend that we're noticing pick up again, so we want to take a look at that. But you'll see this month by month for all of these 6 buildings, as well as just kind of an overall table of energy usage, energy purchases, solar. We've got net metered solar PV, so that's the rooftop solar, PG4 production. This one we haven't talked about in a while because it's no longer applicable, but this was we did a pilot solar program with MG&E where they installed some panels at City Hall and some at the Public Works building. And for 10 years, we got credit for that solar. After the 10-year contract with them expired, they now claim that as part of their grid mix. So that's why these numbers disappear for PG4. This is the Green Power Tomorrow purchase that I was mentioning. And then Renewable Energy Rider, this is the O'Brien Farm purchase. So these 4 columns here are the entirety of solar purchases for each individual building. And then the grid renewables is just what's the remaining amount that we buy from MG&E, what percentage of their grid mix is renewable, and just do that quick multiplication. So that all goes into the total renewables calculation for each building. And then kind of looking at what percent of the building's overall usage, and that's this 3rd column here, is renewables. So City Hall, we're in that 40 to 50% range since we started buying into the O'Brien solar farm. You'll see some of the other buildings that have as large solar arrays as City Hall or larger and a lower electricity use. We actually get pretty close to offsetting 100% of some buildings' energy use with renewables. And then there's a second page for each building that, again, just has a lot more detail on solar production, on electric use. And then this is just for 2023, a month-by-month look at the different sources of electricity, where it's coming from each month. And so here again, you see that highlighted the renewables to net use for City Hall, 47% last year. If we look at the community center, it's going to be a lot lower because there's not that rooftop solar. Well, not a lot lower, 53%. So this one, the O'Brien purchase is much more substantial for that building. Public Works building has super low electricity use overall and a very large system. So this one, 90% of the building's electricity needs are met through renewables. In this case, mostly the net metered solar and a much smaller amount from the O'Brien array. And kind of skip through the rest of the buildings. Fun to look at, but don't need to dig through each one individually right now. There's a summary here looking at the CO2 equivalent emissions for each building, or not for each building, but for each different major energy type that we have, and then total as a city. This one we've actually seen, this is not a per capita, this is just the overall CO2 equivalent emissions for the city's energy have gone down. Going back to 2018, there was a little bit of an increase, and then we've been decreasing every year since. This is despite the loss of that rooftop solar. Now that's about 8% of our total electricity use, so that would only nudge this down a little bit, but still we're doing pretty well here. Plan to still make more improvements, particularly with the EVs and the gasoline. We're going to see that go down, and then just keep working on efficiency and renewable electricity. And then going down to the bottom, essentially there, let's get past a couple more graphs. The final section that I put in here that is going to need a little bit more work and kind of forward-looking analysis is looking at all of the goals that we've set from the 25 by 25 pledge as part of that energy independent communities effort in 2009, kind of where we are with each one of the pledges. Some of them we completed, some we could still, some of them, increase renewable fuels in vehicles by 2010 and 2015. Well, that one, we can't really hit that anymore. So there's some that are just not completed. So just kind of putting the status on each one of those, as well as the different goals that we had from the clean energy resolution. This is not the greatest way to present this. This is just sort of the way I've thrown it together so far. I think that once we have the sustainability plan finalized, my guess is that we're far enough past the energy independent communities pledge that I may stop tracking that one as closely, and we'll really focus on the sustainability plans goals and then the clean energy resolution goals as well, and look to have a new way to track those, as well as maybe some type of a dashboard that it can be publicly reported, hopefully annually, on what our status is on the city's major goals and commitments. So far, this is, if we look at these two columns of the clean energy resolution, or I guess all three of these are the major goals from that CER. The one we've hit so far is 25% electricity by 25. The rest are now our remaining energy goals that we're looking to hit. So in a really, really large nutshell, and knowing that there's still a little bit more analysis and kind of future goals to throw in here, that is the report that I threw into your packet, plus a little bit of bonus content that you didn't get to see.
Yeah. Phil, that report is an incredible amount of work, and I think there's a lot in there to digest. Did you mention that you were at the Committee of the Whole? Did you present this to the Committee of the Whole?
I didn't. I didn't have enough of it completed yet. I gave just a little bit of a taste of it. I haven't presented this report to council ever. So this was one that back in 2022 in the spring, I had some UW grad student interns working with me to kind of put the base spreadsheets, calculations, formatting together for this. And then I spent the better part of the next year, when I had time to work on it, kind of cleaning up and formatting this. It still needs work. I just think it's too content heavy right now. It's really interesting for me. It's not really easy to digest if you're not into energy. So I still want to make some improvements there. But yeah, at the very least, I do share this when I complete it with city leadership, with the Chad and Kevin with facilities. Would like to share it in some form with council as well. Bill, you could tell me what you think, if this is maybe a little bit too heavy to share in its entirety with council, if something that's a little bit more of a high level summary would be more well received.
Yeah, I think what you did tonight would be appropriate for a Committee of the Whole meeting, but not for a regular council meeting. Yeah,
I don't know that I would share this at a regular council meeting. Certainly trying to get on a COW agenda just to talk about the city's energy usage. The last time I did that was kind of piggybacking off of an RCC presentation in about 2020 probably, so it's been a bit.
Okay. I think Gabriella, current council president, has been trying to keep the Committee of the Whole presentations down to about 20 minutes, and then time for questions, so that we can have several topics for each meeting.
Yeah, once I feel like I've got this more finalized, I'll share it with Chad and see what he thinks about whether this is something that he'd like to bring to CAW.
When was our last Committee of the Whole meeting?
2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should probably be targeting something in the next 6 months or so, since it's been a little while.
Yeah.
Maybe after April elections?
Yep.
Okay.
When you get, will you send us the finished, well, not the finished one, but the one that you just showed us that has the more extra pages on it? And do you plan on putting this on the website?
That's another one I'm thinking about. I think so. I'll talk to Chad. I can't think of a reason that I wouldn't want to. I don't think there's any information in here that shouldn't be public, but I'll confirm with Chad before I would do that. Again, it's not something that's like, hey, let's put this on the front page and encourage everyone to read it, just because it is it's very data heavy. It's a bit wonky, but it might be good to have publicly available anyway.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Thank you for the hard work on this. It's looking really good.
Thanks a lot, Phil.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll give you a break here, and we'll move on to agenda item 6, council update. Bill?
The Transportation and Transit Commission is back to full membership as of this coming Thursday here. We've been down 2 members, and we picked one up last month, and we'll get another one this Thursday, so that's good news for us. The council passed an ordinance to approve missing middle density at 9 to 20 units per acre. So that'll help towards our, if we can get more of that, less of the single family, that'll help towards our goal of increasing our population density as, per the sustainability plan. We passed a resolution for additional funding for FGM architects to continue with the police facility design. The current, this is at the, the reduced dollar figure. The current high-level design incorporates $3.5 million in sustainability features, though the council had earlier approved $5 million. And so I guess, there's a bit of wiggle room there, and, Phil mentioned we might see a spike, but, on the other hand, McFarland has a new facility that just opened a year or 2 ago, and that is net zero. So, depending on how things get refined over time, that new facility may or may not cause a great spike in our energy usage.
Will that be coming back to us so we can see what they took out of the sustainability budget?
They haven't really taken anything out. I think that $3.5 million, it was a little fuzzy because I had asked, because previously it was $2.5 million for a 74,000 square foot building, and the new high level figures is a 58, well, whatever it is. It's about 30% smaller footprint for the building, but $3.5 million instead of $2.5, and I wasn't able to get a straight answer as to what went into those numbers. So I think it's all still at a very high level at the moment.
Okay.
But there will be another presentation by the architect to RCC at some point in the future. The city forester continues to work on emerald ash borer management plan. Fitchburg will be part of a Safe Streets for All grant with the MPO, the county, cities of Madison and Verona, and the villages of Cottage Grove and Shorewood Hills. So this would be for, pedestrian, bike facilities, that sort of thing. As it said, safe streets for all. So kind of cutting down on personal motor vehicle usage. Every municipality will have its own independent projects. We're just pooling all of our stuff together for the sake of having a more impressive grant application. The city has hired a new housing specialist. She will be undoubtedly, helping to implement the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy, as well as working with the Efficiency Navigator program to increase energy efficiency and renewables on naturally occurring affordable housing throughout the city. Per the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy, Fitchburg's supposed to average 495 new housing units per year through, I believe it was 2040 was the, that's as far forward as they were looking. Last year, I believe the city had about 360, and 2024 is not shaping up to be a particularly big year, so I think in the future we're going to have to ramp up our housing units. There will be a presentation about the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy at the September 25th Committee of the Whole meeting, in case you're interested in seeing that and what strategies are employed for, increasing housing, but also let's do it in a sustainable fashion. The Bike and Pedestrian Commission continues to work on updates to the Bike and Ped Plan, and I imagine there's a good deal of intersection between that plan and our sustainability plan. The council has decided to move forward with a $3.6 million per year operating expense referendum. That will likely include about $350,000 to extend bus routes 65 and 75 from commuter hours only to all-day service, which will open up paratransit to anyone within a half a mile of either of those lines. And those lines would then meet up at Triverton Pike Road just south of McKee. That's where the north-south BRT route will also extend to. That portion of the transit, though, includes only those two lines. It does not also include extending the existing Route B to that location, which would, connect all three of those lines. So unfortunately, there's still going to be about a half to 2/3 of a mile walk between there and Cahill, Maine, or I think that's where the bus stop is by the hotel. And there will be 3 virtual meetings regarding the referendum, public outreach meetings, as well as 4 in-person meetings between September 18th and October 28th. And you can find that information on the city's website. That's the end of my stuff.
All right.
Bill, could we or could you include in the operating budget, so I think that's probably in discussion now and amendments are being accepted, something so that the city starts buying that page in the Star again, so we have a way to communicate with residents?
I could ask about that again, yes.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 7, staff and commissioner update. Ben, you want to go ahead for solid waste?
Sure. Other than the RFP and getting that contract done, kind of just working on pulling together info and data for the 2025 DNR Responsible Unit Recycling Grant. So this is just the annual grant the city applies for each year. That's due October 1st. We'll probably get that submitted next week sometime. There's been some pretty high-level discussions regarding the potential kind of a smaller community composting area at the proposed agriculture park. That's the parkland that's in Terravessa, so kind of the south end of Terravessa at the Goodland Park Larson intersection. The city's got, I don't know how many acres, a bunch of acres out there. The plan is to have an agricultural park, which would include like a shelter, some plots of various sizes, probably larger plots than you would see at a normal community garden. It might be another opportunity to just kind of promote the composting, doing more of that, so you're not having to drive stuff. There's not, vehicles involved. People from Terravessa could, in theory, just kind of take some stuff over there and then use it for their gardens. So see how that goes. That's kind of it for solid waste.
Okay. One question. I guess I have an attorney. Is there an update on how the recycling center is going to be managed? I know we've talked about it in the past, but anything been decided or
not
forward?
Really?
Nothing?
Not really, no. Other than accepting brush there.
Yeah, the drop-off site, yeah. So we're just going to keep it the way it is, or?
I mean, not necessarily, but it's kind of where it stands right now. Yeah.
I thought we had discussions that we were going to reduce the number of hours and number of days, and but
just want to make it as easy as it can be for folks to recycle. We could do it. We could just shut it down and see what happens. But it's not a huge cost to the city to operate it the way it's being operated now. When you look at the big picture of how much is being spent on these services, is what I think the reality is.
I think Ron, that discussion was if we were staffing it.
Yeah.
And then we would only staff it maybe 3 days a week to cut down on the abuse that's going on. I think that's what that discussion was. And I don't think there are any plans to staff it, right?
Correct.
Or cut back the number of days.
Correct. Okay. Right. I mean, the only reason I think to cut back the number of days would be so you could staff it, because they're definitely not going to pay for a full-time, staff member out there. Yeah.
So what do you think would trigger that discussion to come back on the table? Like, just widespread cardboard everywhere out there? Or, I mean...
It was a big mess. I mean, when you think about the city's they're not spending that much money on the cardboard is kind of the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe if there were more problems with the illegal dumping, but this camera's been doing a pretty nice job. Everyone that dumps illegally, other than the brush, because you can't really tell on the camera, they're getting cited for it. It's covering the cost of the illegal dumping.
Right. So
those citations, that dollar amount, at least the last we were told, is not going to the refuse and recycling fund. It's going to the general fund. So it's really not offsetting the cost.
Yeah, I'll have to check into that.
Okay.
I think it would be a challenge, just because so many people use it so frequently, that if we suddenly went to a few days a week, even with, a lot of public announcements on it and outreach, we would still probably have, potentially, more complaints coming from that than, the current issues we might be challenged with out there. But I think, we'll just, I guess, continue to monitor it, and if things start to,
I was initially really all about trying to change hours, do some stuff, but kind of the more I looked at the numbers and what it's costing compared to, folks that live here, residents, have it really good as far as being able to go out there, and it makes it really easy for people to recycle. Not everyone's got a 9-to-5 job. There's people working, different hours, and having it the way it is now, I think really does make it convenient, or more convenient for people. And there's no doubt that the city's spending some dollars to recycle cardboard from other communities and stuff, but it's kind of a small fraction of the total contract cost with Pelletary.
Okay. And the cost that it would be to add staff, probably, right?
Right, and then you throw in the staff, then I don't know if there really is a cost saving at that point. It would be, I still think if the staff could be on board and there was enough support for it, not a bad idea, because you could potentially then open up some other options. Maybe people could bring electronics or something like that. But if it's just going to be yard waste, cardboard, motor oil, metal, polystyrene like it is now, I don't know. I really did initially think you'd see more of a return on getting it staffed, but I don't know if I think that way anymore.
A couple of times when city staff had additional hours that they were trying to fill in, they would go and actually police and just kind of check, and people would have to prove that they're Fitchburg residents. So, occasionally doing that, I think, is maybe a helpful way to help police the cardboard placement, maybe coming in from other communities. So I don't know, keep that as an idea on the table.
Yeah, honestly, like even some bigger signs out in the entrance, where that it says Fitchburg recycling drop off, right before you turn in. There's not any signs that say Fitchburg residents only until you get to the gate. Yeah. Cameras, then you're actually in the facility, and it's kind of small. Someone just was going to dispute a citation because they said there wasn't any signage out. Well, there
are two signs.
There's two signs. Yeah. There's actually three, because that flashing sign often says Fitchburg residents only or contractors not allowed, one of those two things. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely signs, but maybe we get a big one right out in front. But that's kind of ugly too, so I don't know.
I can tell it's not something you're going to tackle right away.
Probably not.
We'll just monitor the cardboard collection. Then we'll send Oregon a bill.
There we go.
Thanks, Ben. Move on to stormwater.
So we got a fairly large project out right now. That's the Sod Farm Area H Regional Basin. It was advertised September 6th. Already got quite a few plan holders. We'll get bids back. Thursday, September 26th is when we'll open those, and see where that lands. They're kind of big news. We did get the stormwater quality modeling for TMDL areas done. This will kind of be more of a focus, and we'll talk more in detail about this at the October meeting. But we did see some pretty significant reductions in both total suspended solids and total phosphorus, really in the Nine Springs watershed in particular. Still not meeting the TMDL required phosphorus waste load allocation in Nine Springs, and I guess I'll just preface all of this with saying these are preliminary modeling results. So the DNR will review these and approve them, but I'm sure they'll have some comments and we'll make some changes. But really, I think the numbers that we've got right now are basically the numbers that more or less will get approved.
Did you say we're not meeting the target?
Correct.
Even though we've had significant reductions?
Yes. So it's when this was done, like in 2008, they were looking at phosphorus. I think for Nine Springs, the percent reduction that you're looking to be at is 54, 56%, one of those. We're at about 37 now. And that's just, and the reason for that is a lot of that area developed before there were stormwater quality standards. So you look up the fish hatchery corridor and you see, those strip malls, not a ton of stormwater management necessarily there. So, and those are, it's kind of a hard thing to fix, really. I think Fitchburg's in a good spot because the water quality requirements for redevelopment are stricter than many other municipalities. So when those sites do redevelopment, they will have to, include stormwater management features on those sites. But, outside of the right-of-way, the city doesn't have a lot of land out in that way where you could build a pond. There'd probably have to be a land purchase to get any kind of appreciable gains. And certainly there's other things that, we are looking at doing that will be discussed in this report. I think that Nine Springs Pond and the golf course is underutilized right now. there's some other smaller things that could certainly be done, but yeah, it's just a tough area just due to the age at which most of it developed. Now, if you look at Swan Creek, much of that developed, 2000 and later. There, it looks like the city is meeting its TMDL requirement.
What happened with that grant application and partnering with Dane County to shore up the creek bed right along?
The Yarmouth Greenway.
Yeah.
So it is in the CIP. We're looking to see if Yahara Winds would be interested in funding that project. It doesn't seem like Yahara Winds wants to get in on this project. Now, Yahara Winds, at some point, will need to complete some kind of a project in the Nine Springs reach shed, to meet the permit, the WIPD's permit that is, handed out by the state.
So wouldn't that project help with the TMDL?
Well, I would say yes, in reality, but on paper, it's probably not something we could get credit for because the TMDL assumes that all of your streams and creeks and waterways are in good, stable condition. So we're working under the assumption that all of these reaches are, all these channels are stable. Of course, this one isn't. So on paper, there's not really much we can show. But in reality, yeah, I mean, it's a good project. You're going to be eliminating a lot of sediment discharge.
One of the banks collapsed recently, too.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it clearly needs to be addressed. Whether or not the city's going to get a whole bunch of credits for it, it'd be great if they could, but it still is a project that it needs to be completed. And it's unfortunate that, the city's not able to take credit for work like that. It's just not really incentivized. Now, there are other grants that we could apply to, the urban non-point source construction grant being the one that I would like to target. But I don't know that Yahara Winds was necessarily interested at this point in this project specifically. And that's fine because, like I said, eventually to meet the permit requirements, there'll have to be work done in all of the reach sheds. And I mean, they're absolutely right. When you look at how much you're spending compared to the total pounds of phosphorus you're going to reduce by this project, it's not really a good ratio. There's a lot of other projects that could be done in agricultural land, not necessarily Nine Springs, but in other reach sheds that are going to reduce a lot more phosphorus for a lot less money. And I think there's just so much low-hanging fruit still left out that, Winds is going to want to kind of target those best bang for your buck projects before they would, take a look at a project like this, which totally makes sense. Some other things here, kind of still working through the Fitch Run Road, Goose Lake, stormwater improvements project. So right now, AECom, consultant working on this, they're doing some model updates of existing condition. We'll be doing a wetland delineation, getting some additional topographic survey, and then hopefully this year, sooner than later, we'll get some transducers or basically just water level monitors out there. We'll get a few to look at the groundwater and then a couple to look at the elevation of the lake surface as well.
Is there still consideration looking putting flow in Badger Mill Creek?
Yes. Yeah, and that would be kind of, I think, still the ideal approach for us. We do want to get a little bit more groundwater data to inform our design. so we'll get some transducers out there, see what we kind of get. And I don't know, it seems like there is still a potential that the effluent currently discharged by MMSD would not be turned off. I know CARPC recommended that their recommendation to the DNR was that it should not be turned off, or in those words more or less. But I think the DNR probably pretty soon here has to come out with their final rule, like this week probably even. So we'll see. I mean, maybe that'll change what people want out of this project. Maybe the idea of getting a steady or a somewhat steady flow into Badger Mill Creek won't be as desirable to folks. And if that's the case, I mean, spent probably a little bit more money than we would have if we would have known that wouldn't have been the case. But no, we're doing the right thing, so we'll see. And just got to get some plans and specs pulled together for some 2025 projects. We'll be looking at dredging Quarry Hill, doing some repairs to the Techland infiltration basin. This is the failed infiltration basin off of Nobel, kind of by Kamika, and I don't know the name of the apartment buildings out there, but basically needs to be dug out and tilled up.
Isn't that a fairly new pond?
This one was 2014, I believe, so 10 years old. It shouldn't have failed. I think there's too much water going to it. It's taking too much of a sediment load. The Quarry Hill Pond, which is right next to the Techlands Pond, we'll get that one dredged out. We should be able to get a good price given its proximity to the other work that we'll have going on. And then we got to figure out a couple other ponds to throw in there as alternates. Maybe the Seminole Hills Pond, potentially the Crossing Pond. We got to do some sediment depth testing out there. Probably not that one. There's probably some other higher priority ones, but there's a lot of ponds that could be dredged.
Where do the dredge spoils go?
Yeah, so that's ideally they could be. Well, first of all, you would test it to make sure it's not toxic. If that's the case, then it needs to be disposed of in an appropriate landfill where you're not going to be contaminating groundwater. But given that these are primarily residential, probably not any sources of major contaminant sources. We'll test it. The results will probably be all within the DNR's limits, and then you could just land spread it. There is that park right in between the Techlands Basin and the Quarry Hill Pond. It's more of a tall grass area. Could spread it out there, but I think we're just going to have them haul it off site because that area, it would probably take a while to get that area to come back. If you're just going to dump spoils over it, you'd have to, reseed, and I think it's pretty decent native vegetation out there now. Maybe throw it in as an alternate just to see what kind of price we would get if we let them do that, and then if it's attractive enough, then we'd consider it. But the last dredging projects that we did, we just had the contractor haul it off site. And for some of these smaller ponds, that's probably not a big deal. If you're going to dredge McKee Farms Park, and you're taking out thousands of cubic yards of sediment, it would probably be nice to find a home for that stuff that's pretty close.
Yeah, the city can't use it for road construction or things like that, or if it's clean.
Yeah, it's just It's not good fill material. There's a lot of organic material, clay, silt. It just doesn't really make great roadbed material or fill material. I mean, if they wanted to raise the grade of the soccer fields right across the pond, then it'd be great for something like that, but not any kind of a structural fill.
Okay.
And is this, could you put that on farm fields? Is it detrimental? Is it helpful? Neutral?
Well, again, it would all come back to getting the testing done, just to make sure that what's in there you don't have anything harmful in there.
But I mean,
if you didn't,
organic silt and clay sounds like good soil.
If you didn't, maybe someone would want that spread on their farm. I just don't know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we have previous results from other dredge ponds, correct? Data.
We do, and so far, and we don't test for organic content. It's more of like heavy metals that they test for, because that's what primarily concerned leaching into groundwater. There's some other chemicals on there, but yeah, so far the tests have been pretty good. I mean, we haven't had anything above the limits. So, from that standpoint, that's been good. I mean, everything that has been dredged so far could have been land applied.
Right. Thank you. 15 more minutes left. Okay, Phil, sustainability. I know you've probably covered some of this already, but let's go ahead.
Yeah, I think I probably have. So I did mention the solar panels have all been replaced, or solar panels, the solar inverters, I mistyped that. We're getting full production as far as I know. The data that's coming through my online tracker is weird. It should be giving me for the library and the public works building that had those faulty inverters, should be giving me in the order of 1 to 4 or 500 kilowatt hours of production per day, and instead I'm getting 100 million to 400 million is what's showing up online. Probably not correct. So working with that company to figure out why the data. So it's a different make of inverter, and I don't know if the data comes in a different way and it's not translating properly, but it's a little wonky. So I still can't export the data yet, but at least we know we've got functional equipment on the rooftops. I don't remember if this update was shared. It was like last winter, Ben was working on some signage around the city, and one of the things was we had talked about the geothermal educational signboard outside the library was really cracked and weather worn, and we did get that replaced. Of course, now the other signboard right next to it that talks about the rooftop solar arrays looks just as bad, so that'll be on the docket for probably next year to get that replaced. I did mention 3 EV purchases the council is going to be considering for the fleet this month. Those covered kind of an administrative or inspector vehicle for the police department, as well as vehicles for building inspection and assessment. We're also looking at some more Ford Lightnings, possibly some other vehicles for the public works department. So in the next 6 months, between 5 and 7 new electric vehicles is the goal for purchases for the city. So right now we're just at the 2 EV Lightnings in public works, and that could take us up to between 7 and 9 total EVs in our fleet. So that'll be really nice. And then, yeah, as Bill mentioned, we're working out a contract with a consultant for the bike and ped plan refresh. So hoping to have that take place for the most part just over the fall and winter. And then we'd like to have that plan update done by spring. It's not a full plan redo, just sort of give it a fresh coat of paint. We've got some new neighborhoods and have accomplished some of our goals from 2017. So we're just looking to get a little bit of a facelift on it.
Vehicles. Is the city also upgrading the EV charging infrastructure for those vehicles?
Yeah, we'll have to install some EV chargers for that. We won't be using the public chargers that are out in front of community center and the library, so we'll get some that are put in just for city use.
Okay, Great. Any questions for the staff? Other questions for them?
This is for the staff and you, Ron. Can we please invite somebody from the police department to come and discuss MedDrop?
Yep.
This is the guy we'll want to ask.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to item 7D, activities being conducted or monitored by the commissioners. If anybody has anything, I think one thing along the mayor was also sending out emails, Ben, regarding the dark sky ordinance. So you provided her with an update. Can you provide us with an update?
Yeah, so it was on the back burner, and that's my fault. But I'll have a new draft for the end of this week.
You're trying to make it similar to the Verona dark sky ordinance or lighting ordinance?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Are we calling it a dark sky, or is it going to be lighting?
I'm calling it, I've got it called exterior lighting because it does kind of go off into other things that aren't necessarily dark sky related. But
I mean, as a selling feature for the city, just dark sky ordinance sounds better.
It does. I agree with that. That's got a good sound to it.
Versus exterior lighting ordinance.
Yeah, that's pretty boring.
That's a new thing.
Yeah.
I had a quick thing. So I had a meeting with Sustain Dane today, and we have gotten to 17 schools in the Madison School District that are doing carton recycling, which is great. We're trying to take it all the way. And so we have gotten Sun Prairie now is doing 3 of their schools is doing carton recycling, and then we're going to take it the rest of the way this fall with 6 more elementary schools will be added in Sun Prairie. So our little program at Aldo Leopold is expanding out to Sun Prairie now and hopefully out to other communities. But we're still focused on Madison. And so I am presenting with the executive director of Sustain Dane at, we're going to go and take a 3-minute slot up at the next MMSD board meeting on September 30th and, make a recommendation that they put a policy in place because we've proven how we can do it. And that's with putting covers essentially on the recycling equipment. And so we believe that will work in the schools. We just need the district to get behind taking that one on and taking it to the finish line at this point because there's been a lot of staff changes and we've been at it for a while now, 6-7 years. And so that time has come to try to take this step with it.
Well, that's great news.
You've proven that it works, so that should be enough. It's not that you think that it works. You've proven that method works. So congratulations.
Yeah.
So when it becomes policy, that's the next announcement.
On the articles for Fitchburg Star, Bill, you submitted yours just recently. I'm up for October. And Andy, I don't know who's for November. Do we have anybody slated?
We have somebody through the rest of the year.
We do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe, oh boy, I don't have my notes at hand. I thought Jim was going to do Talking Trash.
Talking Trash, November.
I can't remember who signed up for December, but I could either, I think someone had said they wanted December, and then I was going to take January, but I can easily step in and do December.
Maybe Phil was thinking about doing December with an update on sustainability, maybe? I don't know. Maybe you could shoot everybody an email to remind us.
Yeah, I think we had it figured out at the last meeting through like January. So
I thought so.
We'll share it out and then I'll try to put it in the meeting minutes.
Okay. All right, thanks, Chris.
I had down Bill for September and Ron for October. And then Chris doing Salt November and Jim in December.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Okay.
So who was with
Fine
December?
with me, either way.
Jim is in December
I had
and Chris is in
Jim doing talking
Chris is
trash in
November.
December.
I'm doing salt.
And Chris covering salt in November.
Okay.
And then, yeah, Andy, you were January.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil.
Yep.
Can we get a waste sort scheduled, Ben?
I'll talk to Pelletary.
Not in warm weather.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, maybe
we
early
don't.
November.
Yeah, it's that's one of those things where the cold weather is
Yeah.
going to help. Yeah.
Not too cold, but maybe early November.
I figured we'd do it in one of the maintenance facilities where it's cold and there's not going to be stuff blowing around in the wind, and I think that's maybe where they did the last one.
We did it across from the maintenance garage, whatever that
Right,
building
one of those
is.
little at the salt shed or the old salt shed
Yeah,
maybe is
yeah.
what that is. Yeah.
Well, we have two more meetings, October, November, before the end of the year. In terms of planning for our calendar for 2025, at some point, I think we need to have a discussion on our focus areas for next year. It could be the green fleet policy, something, finalizing the dark sky ordinance.
That's going to be in 2024.
Yeah, 2024.
Mark my words.
Okay. Yeah. So, come up, think of some things that we want to carry forward. So we're open for discussion. Anything else? If not, we can adjourn the meeting at 8:56. 4 minutes ahead of schedule. I don't know how Chris did it last time. Got done at 8:30.